你们喜欢他唱的《月亮代表我的心》吗？4个语言呢，那个是2006年慈善筹款，那段片你没有看到总理的名字。大家早上好，欢迎你们来到 Copthorne Kings。Copthorne Kings。Copthorne Kings 最出名的是什么呢？这是我今天唯一问你们的问题，因为今天是你们要问什么就问什么，不会答非所问。一眨眼，时光就飞掉了。我这位好朋友已经认识他40年了，我也不知道他是歌手哎。Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Kin Lian's event. I have known Kin Lian for 40 years. We first met when we served on the board of trustees of the Singapore Professional Centre about 40 years ago. So you know that he's a singer, can sing 4 languages in a charity event. It is my honor, pleasure, and privilege to present to you the next President of Singapore, Kin Lian.
Good morning. I am participating in the upcoming election to give the people of Singapore a chance to vote for a president that is independent of the ruling party. The president has to perform 2 key duties set out in the Constitution. They are to safeguard our past reserves and to protect the integrity of our public service. If elected, I intend to perform these 2 key duties diligently, honestly, and to the best of my abilities. I will now state how I intend to carry out these 2 key duties if I were elected as president. I deal with the first duty. Our past reserves comprise of a large sum that probably runs into several hundreds of $billions, maybe more. It is vitally important that our reserves are invested soundly to produce a good rate of return over the long term, covering 5 years or longer, and is not exposed to high risk. I will highlight this overall investment strategy to the professional investment managers so that they can carry out their work in the best possible way to achieve the desired results. Many people have expressed concern about the large investment losses amounting to several tens of $billions incurred by our sovereign funds during the past year. We should accept that the market values of investments will fluctuate from year to year according to the underlying conditions of the global economy. And we should not judge the performance of the past year with the benefit of hindsight and with inadequate knowledge of the actual conditions that influence the investment decisions. However, there are valuable lessons that can be learned from our recent experience. I intend to ensure that these lessons are properly identified and learned so that we can make better policy and operating decisions in the future. The actual monitoring will be the duty of the board of directors, but they will receive my advice and guidance on the approach to be taken. Apart from ensuring that the past reserves are invested prudently, I intend to work with the government to ensure that the past reserves are used wisely for the benefit of our current and future generations. I now deal with the second duty. It is vitally important that we have the right people at the top levels of our public service. While we should continue to value the contribution of our scholars who have excellent thinking skills, we should also value the knowledge and experience of people who have spent many years on the job and they know the ground well. We need different types of people, those with talents and those with practical experience, to form a good team. I wish to see that people who have gained knowledge and practical experience from many years of dedicated service are given the opportunity to advance to positions of leadership. I will be influenced by these factors in approving the recommendation of the people to be appointed into the top level of our public service. I intend to play an active role in dealing with these two key duties of the President. I believe that the active involvement of the President and a new direction are necessary to give a new vigor to our governance. With the knowledge and experience from 30 years as a Chief Executive Officer of NTUC Income Insurance Cooperative, I am confident that I will be able to perform these two key duties well. I intend to do so for the benefit of the people of Singapore. Beyond these constitutional duties, I have a vision to use the President's office to influence policies that will make a better life for the people of Singapore. I will focus on three fundamental areas crucial to the well-being of our citizens: bringing down the cost of living, ensuring affordable housing for all, and securing jobs that provide a sense of stability and a path to progress. Now, I must clarify that I don't intend to be an adversary to the elected government. On the contrary, I hope to work in collaboration with the government to achieve the goals stated above. My vision is to build a nation where the people are united and live in harmony. I believe the people will be united when they feel financially secure and are able to look beyond their immediate concerns and think about the greater good of our society. This was a spirit of unity and pride that Singaporeans felt 50 years ago. We need to rekindle that spirit. I come from a humble background. Throughout my entire life, which spans 75 years as of now, I have been in close touch with ordinary people. I know their hardship and aspirations. If I am elected into the high office of President, I intend to remain in close touch with the pulse and heartbeat of the people. I ask for the support of the people of Singapore to give me a strong mandate so that I can provide an independent perspective and act in collaboration with the ruling government to deal with the challenges of the future. Thank you. 大家早上好。我参与即将举行的选举，是为了让新加坡人民有机会投票，选出一位独立于执政政府的总统。根据宪法规定，总统必须履行2项关键职责，他们是为了保护我们过去的储备，并保护我们公共服务的完整性。如果当选，我将精勉诚实，尽我所能履行这2项职责。除了这职责之外，我还有一个愿景，利用政府办公室影响政策，为新加坡人民创造更美好的生活。我将重点关注3个领域：降低生活成本，确保所有人能够负担得起住房，以及确保提供稳定感和进步之路的就业机会。现在我必须澄清，我无意成为民选政府的对手，相反，我希望与政府合作，实现上述目标。我请求人民的支持，给予我强有力的授权，以便我能够提供独立的视角，并与执政政府合作，应对未来的挑战。谢谢。
下一位是一位前任总理的前任秘书。The next speaker is the proposer for Kin Lian's candidacy for president. He is a former presidential candidate and former principal private secretary to one of our former prime ministers. Tan Ji Se.
Good morning, everyone. I support Mr. Kin Lian as candidate for president. He will make a good president, a courageous, genuine, and humble one. For someone who lost his deposit in the 2011 presidential election 12 years ago, it definitely takes a lot of courage to place himself at the mercy of the voters to contest again. No matter what, I think we can all admit that courage is commendable. Kin Lian has asked me to be his proposer in the event that he goes ahead with his nomination. As you all know, I was one of his opponents in the 2011 presidential election. For him to ask me to be his proposer, I think that in itself speaks volumes about his humility. I believe that if elected, Kin Lian will bring this humble and courageous attitude to listen to all sides and genuinely serve the people of Singapore. Secondly, Kin Lian clearly meets all the qualifying criteria to be a candidate. As CEO of NTUC Income from 1977 to 2007, he was the most senior executive within the organization that had at least $500 million shareholder equity during the last 3 years and was profitable during the period of 30 years when he was in charge. He does not need any waivers for him to qualify for this election. At the moment, there is some doubt on whether there will even be an election. So with his entry, there will be no walkover and there will be a contest, something I believe Singaporeans want to see. On a lighter note, as well, an additional public holiday is always nice. Thirdly, Kin Lian is clearly independent of the government. He left party and government-linked organization more than 15 years ago. He also manages his own money, not any government funds. This independence of the government is the most important quality in a president if he is to truthfully perform his twin roles of upholding the integrity of the public service and safeguarding the reserves. Recent public scandals have eroded the people's trust in the government. We need to bring back this lost trust. Continuous governance by the same political party for as long as most of us can remember, 64 years, has unfortunately resulted in the distinction between the political and civil service leadership being blurred. As a result, both parties have become less careful in dealing with and respecting each other as independent entities. The purpose of the civil service is to serve the people, regardless of political leadership. That means there should be clear guidelines on how elected officers should approach civil servants for information, on whom to ask, and how civil servants should respond to requests for information for personal use and not for public interest. An independent president will be the most appropriate party to initiate and moderate such an exercise in setting clear guidelines. Only then can we bring back trust in the government to best serve the people of Singapore. With regard to the President's role of safeguarding reserves, we must guard against overstating the need for huge reserves to defend the Singapore dollar. Putting aside too much of our savings for this purpose may restrain our economic growth and hold up the government's efforts to help the people of Singapore in managing the rising cost of living, to ensure the provision of affordable housing, and to create diverse and rewarding job opportunities for our people, many of whom now feel helpless and without hope in a challenging world economy. An independent president can take a fresh look at the requirements. Mr. Ng Kok Song told us that when Dr. Goh Keng Swee asked him years ago in MAS to defend the Singapore dollar against speculative attacks, he used very little of the reserves to do so. Mr. Tan Kin Lian has spoken about our reserves at the Hong Lim Park rally some time ago. And I am sure that if elected president, he will do a fresh and thorough review with MAS officials and guide them on the appropriate level of reserves to put aside to defend the Singapore dollar and for other emergency needs. If we do not need too much to do so, the president will give us hope that he will not stand in the way of the government if it decides to use more of the reserves to help the people. This would be a proper and legitimate use of our reserves and should not be misconstrued as a raid on our reserves. In essence, for a humble, genuine, and courageous people's president, for proper democracy and effective independence, I support Mr. Tan Kin Lian's 2023 presidential election bid. I commend Singaporeans to support him. If elected, President Tan Kin Lian will bring back trust and give us hope. Thank you.
If I may reiterate what Tan Jise said, he is the only presidential hopeful in the private sector to qualify outright based on the 500 million shareholders' equity. And maybe that's why he was the first to submit his certificate of eligibility application a few weeks before the other three. 下一位是人民之声党的领导。Our next speaker is a seconder for Tan Kin Lian's candidacy for president. He is the party leader of People's Voice Party and renowned human rights lawyer, Lim Tian.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. I thought I would not use a mic because I've got a loud voice, but good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am very pleased and honored to be the seconder for the candidacy of Tan Kin Lian to be the President of Singapore. I first heard of Mr. Tan's name in the mid-90s when a loved one, who at that time was the board secretary of POSB before it merged with DBS, told me of a very unusual board member who had amazingly innovative and creative ideas of how POSB should go about serving its customers. That board member was Tan Kin Lian. And every Singaporean has had, at some point in their lives, a POSB account. Since knowing Mr. Tan, I have myself experienced the creativity and innovative ideas which emanate from him. Whether he was speaking at Hong Lim Park on a matter of public interest, or in public or private discussions, his overriding objective was always on how to improve the lives of his fellow citizens. I was one of those who strongly urged Mr. Tan to put himself forward to contest the presidential election this year. I know that many Singaporeans are disillusioned by the too many presidential election walkovers in the past. It is a misnomer to call a president an elected president when there is no contest. In the 30-year history of the elected presidency, there have been only two contests. One in 1993, when Ong Teng Cheong was elected, and the other in 2011, which elected Tony Tan. Many Singaporeans also crave for a truly independent president, one with no links to the PAP or any government-linked entities. Every president since the inception of the elected presidency has had links with the government in one way or another. These continuous links between the government and the presidents, as well as the many walkovers, have tarnished the institution of the elected presidency in the eyes of many Singaporeans. Together with the spate of scandals which have plagued the government recently, it is no wonder that the cry from ordinary Singaporeans for a real presidential contest this year and for an independent president is overwhelming. The candidacy of a truly independent candidate such as Mr. Tan, with absolutely no links to the government or government-linked entities, and who meets the strict, very strict qualifying criteria for president, will help Singaporeans regain the trust in their public institutions. In a larger sense, a president must give a nation and our people a certain idea of who we are. It is not only about the ability of the person, it is also whether that person embodies our values and is representative of us as a people. And in this, I'm absolutely confident that Tan Kin Lian's empathy and concern for the well-being of his fellow Singaporeans will mark him out as the people's president. Mr. Tan has spoken of his vision to leverage the office of the president to improve the lives of Singaporeans. His vision comes as a ray of hope to the many thousands of Singaporeans who are struggling under the yoke of the astronomical cost of living, sky-high property prices, and job insecurity. Many young Singaporeans are angry that they are unable to afford a home so as to start a family. This is a far cry from the future which their parents enjoyed. Our total fertility rate is at a disastrous 1.05, a historical low. The continuous influx of immigrants threatens our social fabric and has rightly resulted in much unease among Singaporeans. Singaporean anger over the rising prices of goods and everyday necessities, and also the hike in GST, is increasing by the day. So are their concerns that too many good jobs are going to foreigners instead of locals. Singaporean anger is compounded by unjust policies, such as the one which mandates that new citizens above 30 years of age do not have national service obligations, when local Singaporeans have reservist obligations until they are 40 years old. Now, all the critics can offer is that Mr. Tan does not understand the limited powers of the presidency and that the president has no executive powers. But these critics fail to recognize the broader constitutional duty which the president has, which is to look after the welfare of Singaporeans. His duty is not confined only to safeguarding the reserves and preserving the integrity of the public service, important duties though they may be. The president may not have executive powers, but he is able to leverage on the mandate he has received from the people and the prestige of his office to advise the government of his views on government policies and how they are affecting the people. Singapore inherited the Westminster model of government from Britain. In Britain, the monarch shares the same constitutional position as our president. In fact, the constitutional monarch may be even less powerful than our president because he or she does not have the custodial role of the reserves. The king or the queen may not have executive powers, but that has never stopped them from giving advice to the prime minister in their weekly meetings, private advice. And I am sure that is what Mr. Tan Kin Lian means when he says he will leverage his office to offer his views to the government. And I think it would be foolhardy for any government, for the prime minister or any minister, to simply brush aside the views of an elected president. I think Singaporeans would rather have a person such as Mr. Tan Kin Lian as president, someone who will not hesitate to give his advice to the government on matters concerning their welfare, than a doormat who will simply do the bidding of the government. In conclusion, I endorse Mr. Tan Kin Lian wholeheartedly for President of Singapore.
As Lim Tian said, the people are crying out for a truly independent president and a real contest because he is Tan Kin Lian's principal elected agent, Prabhu Ramachandran.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank the press and the media for coming here today and to attend and cover Mr. Tan Kin Lian's media launch. All right. So, the support that Mr. Kin Lian has been receiving is not just from the elites, the establishment, public institutions and private institutions. It's from everyday, average, ordinary, decent, honest, hardworking people, Singaporeans that you'd see delivering your food every day, Singaporeans that you see driving you, and our transport workers, private hire vehicle workers, taxi drivers, and the everyday men and women of Singapore. So the support that we have been receiving is broad-based, as well as Mr. Kin Lian's assenters that we will be in due time, releasing. It's a stark contrast to, you see, Mr. Tharman's assenters and proposer and seconders that they release. They represent the elites, the establishment, big institutions, chambers of commerce. We are, in contrast, the everyday, ordinary, individual citizens, not organizations or societies. So, I would also, having said that, Mr. Tan is a person who is pretty people-orientated and would fit the role of a people's president. He takes public transport and doesn't move around with security because he's very well liked. People, in a few outings we went, random people came up to him and just asked him and spoke to him, and he gets along with people across all aspects of Singapore society, not just a select group of, a small group of elites and establishment figures. So I would like to also speak very short verse in Tamil, asking for support for Mr. Tan. சிங்கப்பூர் அதிபர் தேர்தலில் சுய தனியாளர் வேட்பாளர் திரு கின் லியன் அவர்களுக்கு உங்கள் ஆதரவை தருங்கள். நான் சக சிங்கப்பூரர்களிடம் கேட்டுக்கொள்கிறேன் தாழ்மையுடன். நன்றி, வணக்கம். And so for that, in conclusion, I wholeheartedly support Mr. Kin Lian due to his appeal to people from all walks of life, Singapore citizens of all walks of life. Thank you very much.
Before we move on to the Q&A, let me introduce or reintroduce the panel. On my right, the seconder for Kin Lian's presidency, candidacy, Lim Tian. On his right, Mrs. Kin Lian, and of course next to her, Kin Lian. The proposer for Kin Lian's candidacy, Tan Jise, Prabhu Ramachandran, his principal election agent, Alan Yeo, one of the centers, and now, 你们要问什么就可以问了. It's Q&A time. Please raise your hand and then state your name and the media. The lady in front, the first one. Yes. I will pass the mic to you.
Hi, I'm Eileen from Lianhe Zaobao. I would like to check with Mr. Tan, when will you release the list of your assenters? And also, second question is, you mentioned previously that you have submitted your eligibility application form, but you say you will decide whether to submit the nomination form after the ELD has actually released the list of eligible candidates. So, do you now plan to submit your nomination form? Are you running?
I've already submitted the application for the COE, and I have to wait for the Presidential Election Committee to decide who is eligible. And when they decide, that's where I will submit my nomination form.
So if there are other candidates who are also qualifying, so will you still submit your nomination form?
I believe that I will be the only candidate from the outside of the establishment. I believe I'm the only candidate. My team advises me after looking at the criteria that it will only be one non-establishment candidate. So I'll be quite confident to submit the nomination.
Next question, please. Yes, the lady in front in the blue.
Hi, Mr. Tan. So in June, sorry,
can you
I'm from the
state
Straits
your
Times.
name and the
Sorry,
media,
I'm Yen
please?
Han from the Straits Times. In June, you wrote in an online piece that you felt that the office of the presidency was unnecessary, wasteful, among other comments. So why have you decided today to run?
Now, that was my view at that time. I've since changed my view because I now find that even within the existing powers of the president in the Constitution, there is a lot that I can do. So because of this, I've now changed my view, and I believe that the president can do something useful, and it will be for the people of Singapore to decide. And if the people of Singapore says, yes, we want a president that is independent, we want a president to use his influence on government policies to reduce the cost of living, to make housing affordable, and to give us secure jobs. If the people of Singapore decide that that is something they want, then they should vote for me.
Hi, morning, Mr. Tan, and thanks for having us. Matthew from CNA. I had a question about a Facebook post you put up yesterday. I think it was about BTO pricing and median income, right? So, if elected president, is that something that you like to push for, given your passion about it? And some might argue that that may be an overreach for the role of president. So, what do you have to say about that specifically?
Now, I have got 3 goals: reduce the cost of living, make housing affordable, make jobs secure. And I have very clear ideas of how it can be done. And I will have to wait to be elected before I will share those ideas. And I do believe that these are possible.
If I may add to Kin Lian's response to your question, Kin Lian has discussed this with us before. President Nathan, just before the end of his term, gave a media interview, and it shocked everyone because he said that the reserves had been used 27 times without telling anybody. Parliament didn't know, the public didn't know, and most of these 27 times he revealed was used for HDB. And shortly thereafter, the Finance Minister, Taman, confirmed it's not 27 times, it's 55 times. So in relation to your question, which Kin Lian has discussed with us, imagine a future government decides to gradually reduce the land cost of HDB BTO flats in order to gradually reduce the price and make them affordable. If you do not have a truly independent president like Tan Kin Lian, what do you think will happen? Okay. Next question, please.
Hi, yeah, I'm Julia from Mothership. I have 2 questions. One's for Mr. Tan Kin Lian and one for Mr. Tan Jisay. Mr. Tan Kin Lian, after your first experience in the PE where you didn't get enough votes to get back your deposit, what motivated you to run again? And do you think this time will be any different? And for Tan Jisay, why didn't you run this time, and why do you choose to support a fellow opponent who didn't perform as well as you?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, why didn't you run this time and choose to support a fellow opponent who didn't perform as well as you in the last PE previously?
The second question is the easiest one. Sorry.
Okay, can I answer the first question? You want to answer first? Okay, go ahead.
No, you can if you want to, Mr. President.
Okay, can you ask the question again directed to me?
I After your previous experience in the PE where you didn't get enough votes to get back your deposit, what motivated you to run again? And do you think this time will be any different?
Now, I want to be quite honest. The other candidate, Mr. George Goh, I have high respect for him. I have high respect for his enthusiasm and his team. And if Mr. George Goh, when he submitted when he expressed his interest, I was quite prepared to stand aside because I think he would be an independent person. But then later on, there were comments that he doesn't qualify. And when Mr. Ng Kok Song come in, and some senior people in the government said it will be a contest between Taman and Kok Song, then I said, no, I want to come in and offer the chance for people of Singapore to vote for someone that is independent. So I do believe that that's very important. We don't want to have a contest between two candidates that are from the establishment. And it will also look very bad. Look very bad because the people of Singapore will be very skeptical. They say one more. Sure, there is a contest, but it's one more of the same. So I want to offer the chance for the people to truly select an independent person, but more important, someone who pledged to do what he can to deal with the cost of living, the cost of housing, and deal with the jobs. Okay, sorry.
I thought you were going to answer for me. The first question is, why do I not stand this time, right? I think the criteria were revised after the 2011 presidential election, and unfortunately they have ruled me out. The second point is, why do I support him? Because I believe, I give you 3 reasons. He's independent, he will give us a public holiday, on a lighter note. But really there will be a contest. I think we want a contest. We cannot afford to have a walkover. So with his entry, there will be a contest, and I think people want a contest, no walkover. And he meets the criteria, all the criteria, very strict criteria, no problem. So that's why he will make it, he will make a contest possible. And thirdly, I think he is very independent, and this is what we need in a president. Right? Okay. And yeah, that's all right. Any other thing?
Can you state your name and your media, please?
I'm Alif from CNA. Mr. Tan, you mentioned that you want to give Singaporeans a chance to vote for someone who's independent of the establishment. But how do you fancy your chances against the other hopefuls, including Senior Minister Taman Shanmugaratnam? And are you confident that you're able to garner more votes than the 2011 elections?
Garner more votes than the 2011 election, I'm very confident because Tan Jise supporters will be behind me, and he has a big following. Now, how will I compete with Taman? Now, Mr. Taman is highly respected, well known, both locally and internationally, but he has got 2 big negatives. One is he's from the PAP. And the people want someone independent of the PAP. And yes, another negative, which I will not mention here, but you see that being spread in social media. So I do believe that while he is has got positive points, he does have negative points. What are my chances? I'm confident that I can give it a very good fight, because the people want to have an independent president, And they also want to have something done about the cost of living, the cost of housing, and security of jobs. And if these are important to them, here is their chance to vote for someone who can make a change. Otherwise, it will be as before, and things will continue to get worse and worse.
Could you please use the mic, because there are a lot of people at the back.
Hello. All right. Good morning, Mr. Tan. This is Lulu from Xinmin Daily News. Yes, right. I just have one very simple question. Can you comment on your team? For example, why did you decide to approach your former opponent, Mr. Tan Jise, as well as, for example, Mr. Lim Tian, who, no offense, I'm actually a big fan, is facing multiple charges?
Now, as someone, an ordinary person, it's very hard to get a strong team, especially when I'm out of the corporate world. So the first two people that approached me are Prabhu and Leong Si Hian. And they said, Kin Lian, you must stand because you are qualified. And and very few of the independent people are qualified. So therefore, and they tried a few times to convince me. So that's the first important reason, and that's why you have got Prabhu and Leong Si Hian. My friend Alan Yeo, he knows me, and he also strongly encouraged me. And because they encouraged me, they now have to work very hard. Okay, they now have to work very hard. And then I need to build the support. And Si Hian advised me, and I take his advice. He says, you must start with getting the people who are non-establishment, the political leaders. They command a good following. So he suggested Jise, and he suggested Lim Tian. And I'm glad that both of them accepted. Now, the people who are non-PAP, who support the other, who support the political parties, the non-PAP parties, probably represent 30 to 35% of the population. Maybe it will be more because of the unhappiness over cost of living, over cost of housing. Maybe it will be more. But I have to reach out to the middle ground. The middle ground of people who are who would swing both ways. I have to reach out, and I believe that this middle ground, they are very concerned also about the independence of the president. They also want to make sure there's more transparency to know what is going on, and they also want to see a way to improve their lives. So I will be reaching out, but I must start with a good base, at least 30, 35, 40%. Then I can go and reach out. Besides these key leaders, I do have quite a large number of people who volunteer in various ways. So although my campaign is quite not a big organization, we are doing our very best.
Hello, Mr. Tan. Good morning. My name is Reno from the Business Times. My question is how you intend to influence policy, like you said. So what would this look like? Are you going to, for example, hold up appointments if the government's policies are not up to your standards?
Okay, I must emphasize that I will be constructive. And I believe the president should work with the prime minister and the ministers in a constructive way. There should be consultation both ways. There should be collaboration because we share the same goal The goal is how to make life better for the people of Singapore, but we may have different approaches. They have their way, and maybe they need to have a new perspective, and I will bring that perspective. So we should be consultative, constructive, and we should be discussing how this can be done. I will bring to this discussion my feel about what the people want. And I think the people find life to be quite difficult. And I can bring innovative suggestions. People who know me, Mr. Lim Tian, Mr. Leong Si Hian, they know me to be a very innovative and creative person. I think out of the box. And I would like to contribute this to the ministers because many of the policies, they are actually stuck. These are the policies of the past. How do you make a change? And making a change is very difficult because if they make a wrong decision, they might lose their job. So therefore, people are reluctant to change. I hope to be able to help them in making those changes.
Hi, my name is Davina from CNA. So, Mr. Tan, you've said that you want to focus on 3 areas, so the cost of living, affordable housing, and also job security. These are very bread and butter issues, but there's also been, as has been acknowledged, some pushback and some questions about whether the custodial role of the president will be able to influence these policies. Some might also argue that being a parliamentarian, you will be able to make an even more of a direct impact in these areas. So can I ask whether it's ever crossed your mind to run for parliament? Why didn't you run in the GE?
I'm quite clear. A person who is elected as an MP face a very tough job in parliament. We see that already. And that person probably have the mandates of 30,000 voters, 40,000. If I get elected, I will have a mandate of 1.5 million people. And that mandate will carry with it something that the government should not ignore. And I think the government will not ignore. They are very sensible people, and they will have to respect that the president carries with him a large mandate. And therefore, I hope that the relationship will be cordial, constructive. We should collaborate and we should consult each other. And I hope to bring an independent perspective, a fresh perspective to how all these problems can be solved. And I hope the people of Singapore will trust me that I can do it.
Sorry, Mr. Tan. Just a follow-up. To clarify, because if the president doesn't have executive power and you want to affect policy, so that will be through, like, talking to the government, through conversation, rather than really having the power to affect.
That's true, yes. And there is a great deal that can be done through talking, through dialogue, through consultation. And this is where I say it is the influence of the president's office.
You used to be a member of the PAP. So you say that you are independent. So how do you actually gel this?
I was very active in helping Mr. Goh Chok Tong build up the Marine Parade community. And we started the first residence committee, and it was successful. It's now replicated all over Singapore. So my involvement went through many years ago. But the PAP at that time was a very different PAP from today. So you must remember, I was very proud to be helping the PAP in those days when it was very clear that they have the support of the population, a large part of the population, and I did what I could to contribute to that. The PAP today is quite different. I think many people feel that they are more towards the elite and not towards the ordinary people. So therefore, you must remember the PAP itself has changed its orientation. So it's a very different PAP from today than from before. And that was why I also left the PAP 15 years ago.
Hi, Mr. Tan. Zulaika here from Berita Harian. Two questions. What are some of the lessons that you learned from 2011 president election campaign that you ran for the first time? Secondly, question about other than the issues you brought up about cost of living, housing, how other ways are you looking to unite Singaporeans? Thank you.
The first lesson is that 2011 was not my time. I hope 2023 will be my time. And the second lesson is I now have the support of very capable advisors, and they are my proposers and seconder. I treasure their advice, and I think they are able to mobilize the ground. Of course, they mobilize one part of the ground. We still have to work hard to mobilize the other part of the ground.
Okay, it's already 12 o'clock. It's time for what Tan King is most famous for. Two more questions. How about that? If you still have any more questions? Yes.
Hi, Mr. Tan. This is Deborah from Today. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. So the social media landscape has changed quite a bit since you last stood in the 2011 elections. You've always been quite vocal across your social media platforms. Was wondering what is your strategy to leverage on social media for PE this year, and will you be streamlining your content moving forward? Yeah, thank you.
I have a election website in 4 languages, and it's in the media pack in English, Chinese, Malay, and Tamil. I hope that more people become aware about that. Of course, some of them are only interested in the key message, but other people want to know more about what am I thinking, they even want to know more about what is my life like, my life story, because I do put there how I grew up in a family with 6 children, and every 2 years we move from one rented house to another. When the lease expires, we have to move. So that was my beginning, and I think those are in my website. So I hope that people who are interested will come to the website. But more importantly, I hope that people will share my views through social media, and they will spread from one to another, especially through platforms like WhatsApp, which I use very often. I get a lot of messages through WhatsApp, through Facebook, through Twitter and other channels, and now TikTok and Instagram. So there are plenty of platforms, but it depends upon whether the people who receive the messages are willing to help spread it virally. And some of my postings in my Facebook, I was very surprised. It went up to more than 100,000 people. Very simple things, 100,000 people, and my highest is 500,000. So 500,000. So I believe that those are very good channels to spread the message.
What you report today may arguably, possibly, probably be the most important news report you may make in your lives. Our country is at its crossroads. The future of Singapore and Singaporeans depends on what you say today. And with that, it leaves me to thank you very much for your presence today.
Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more, don't forget to click on the subscribe button and the notification bell.